Hey guys, Dr. Ahmad Al-Hassiny here from the Institute of Digital Dentistry, and welcome to another podcast episode of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast. And today I am fortunate to be joined by Mr. Jay Kim. Welcome, Jay. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Nice to see you again, man. We haven't seen each other in
Yes,
about a year, and a lot has happened in the past 12 months.
yes, it certainly has. How you been?
I've been
You've
good.
been
I've
busy
been good.
too?
Yeah, like I think globally, we're going to get into this soon together, but I think globally, the past 12 months have been a bit challenging for dentists. I mean, at least on our side of the world, the economy is not amazing, but I think
It's not.
we've troughed down. I think it's pretty much as bad as it's going to get, and it seems like it's getting better.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to hear your point of view because you've been traveling so much this year and kind of getting the background and the stories of kind of every which industry. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And look, just for those who may have not seen the previous episode that we did a year ago, please just introduce yourself and your role in TruAbutment and what TruAbutment does for those who may not know.
Yeah, so my name is Jay Kim. I am the current VP Business Development until they release me or something happens to me. But yeah, I work for a company called TruAbutment. We specialize in implant restorative solutions, especially custom solutions. And then over the years, we've expanded to having developed our own software. We've added our own implant line, and we've come out with some full arch solutions, photogrammetry solutions that you work for full arch with different kind of scanners. And now we're ready to go into the printing solutions world. We're going to be releasing a few materials for printers, 3D printers next year. So we kind of have a whole suite of things that we're doing right now at TruAbutment. So yeah.
Damn, man, you guys keep busy. That's different to what we talked about last year. I mean, of course, most people may know your amazing milling center. You guys do a lot of custom abutments, etc. And then I think you made waves with the ioConnect system when horizontal Scanbodies just started being popular. But before we get into all of that, how's business been for you guys? The last 12 months, is it good? Has it been a challenging year?
Fortunately for us, it's been good. Like you said, the industry in itself generally is not doing so well. There's a lot of slowdowns in dental labs, a lot of big companies downsizing, a lot of funds getting concentrated into, a few companies that will be able to survive what's coming. But for us, fortunately, we've been having very steady growth since 2015, and that growth hasn't stopped. And especially for 2024 going into 2025, we've actually did the same amount of growth that we did from 2023 to 2024. So fortunately, yes, we're in a very good position. That's why I think we're able to put so much money into our R&D. Because if that cash flow didn't happen and if we didn't have that growth, then our growth also would be stunted as we won't be able to invest that much into new products and R&D. So
That's fascinating, man. Well, congratulations. Good for you guys. You're obviously doing
thank
something
you.
correct. And I do wonder if that's just partly because of the rise of implants. A lot of dentists are doing implants now. A lot of people are accepting implants. Patients want implants. And it's certainly an interesting part of dentistry to be in.
Yes, definitely. I think implant growth also, but the perspective that we've been looking at from TruAbutment's point of view is a lot of people can manufacture and design implants. Our perspective and kind of, I guess, goal was to concentrate on digital, right? And so our thoughts were, what can we do to emphasize digital and what other products are not present available in the market, and that's where we were kind of focusing, and that's what led to kind of development of our own software, the full arch, the photogrammetry on iPad, so on and so forth. So
Yeah, man. And look, you and me both, we were, I guess, fortunate in the sense to jump on the digital wave early, and now it's become the standard of care, and everyone's
yes,
interested and everyone's keen, and it's just a super exciting thing. It's funny you mention it. I have done a bunch of travel in the past 12 months at all the major conferences and lecturing around, and yeah, I have to say this year's been probably the most digital I've ever seen. I mean, at
mm,
IDS, you saw some traditional kind of non-digital, let's say, or purely analog companies, let's say, start going into digital. And it's fascinating. And one big boom that we've seen is AI, I think. AI is such a hype word. I think even just driving around, even non-dental, AI is everywhere. Google's
Right,
talking about
right.
AI. Every company's talking about AI. And now in dental, it's starting to really make a push forward.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually one of the strongest push points and R&D aspects of TruAbutment also. It's deep thinking, how we integrate this deep thinking method of, what's out there in the market to dentistry when it comes to not only didactics or solution wise, but even company wise, CS wise, sales wise, so on and so forth. So it's a portion of the industry that everybody I think is very kind of new, at least in dentistry, and everybody's kind of brainstorming how to integrate and what can be integrated into different kind of solutions and products and company structure wise. But we're definitely one of those companies that is heavily investing on AI integration with a lot of our products. So
That's epic, man. And I have a question for you. So, like, we talked a year ago, and like,
yeah,
if you reflect in the past 12 months, what's some, I guess for TruAbutment itself, but the industry as a whole, what's some exciting things that you've seen, or some things that really excite you in dental right now? Because
yeah.
I have my answer, and I'll tell you after. But you go ahead.
Your answer is probably better than mine because my head has been into the ground in TruAbutment with the development and different things that we need to do. So I haven't had the luxury of kind of doing the research and seeing what's out there in the market. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of, when we first talked, we talked about printers and different kind of materials that's coming out for printers. That in itself is into a second phase of development where there's a lot of new printers and things coming out that wasn't available this year but will be available starting next year. I think the scanner market is interesting because I think the major scanning companies now have real competition with the Chinese companies coming out with different kind of scanners at a very low price point compared to the MSRP that we've been used to. And we also at TruAbutment have our own answer to that also moving forward. That's connected to the T marker, but yeah, those are kind of like the main things that I've been seeing and the movement that I've been seeing this year.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. Like the scanner thing that's happening. I mean, we already knew that scanners were being commoditized. But we had the release of the Elite, which kind of was like, wow, a Chinese company can kind of rock the industry. And now
Yep,
that scanners all kind of work, obviously Allied Star being picked up by Straumann, and they're going to
yep,
drive that home. I totally agree. I think the main players like the 3Shape, the Aligns, etc. I think next year they might have a real challenge on their hands because I mean, for example, Straumann is one of the biggest distributors of 3Shape, and now they have their own scanner. And we just saw some labs like Dandy release a scanner. And
yep.
I think, yeah, it's going to be a tough market for some companies. And overall, I think it's a good thing because when times get tough, you either innovate or you die, basically.
Yep, yep. Those
And
companies that can't change with the times, we tend to get, left behind. So there's going to be kind of a filter that goes on, I believe, within 1 or 2 years because the industry is moving so fast. It's unbelievable how fast we're moving with the different changes and innovations that's happening. So you have to do your best to be at the front because if you're not at the front and you're trying to catch whatever's left, it's not going to be much. So
yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny, it's interesting you touch on the 3D printing side because I feel like scanners, it's almost like a mature market. We are seeing some cool things released, like the IPG system, which is horizontal scan bodies with a scanner, and
yep,
some real interesting software releases, AI by 3Shape, and the cloud features, and everyone's going to the cloud. But overall, like in terms of a scanner alone, it's mature now. They all kind of work.
you just
We all kind of
yep,
accept they work, and even with milling, I would say milling is fascinating because it's even more mature. I mean, yeah, we get slightly better milling pathways and faster milling here and there, like what Dentsply released with their composite milling,
yep.
challenge printers. But overall, the materials have been mature for a while, and you touch on 3D printing, and I think that's probably the biggest topic on everyone's mind just to see where that goes, because it's kind of
Right.
watching like generation one zirconia until now, right in front of our eyes.
It is, yeah. And everybody kind of saw the writings on the wall just because of the potential that printers have. And because it's an additive solution, right? If you just compare it from that engineering perspective, as far as companies are able to break through that wall of what's possible, and it's going to happen, we all knew it's going to happen. The potential for the additive solution is so much better and so much more obtuse than anything that milling can do. So I mean, and the question was always, when is it going to shift, right? And everybody was predicting when it's going to shift. I think milling is going to be still around for quite a long time, but there's going to be some really cool changes that happens to additive solutions and printers over the coming years. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. And I have a slight curveball for you before we get into the exciting stuff. What do you think of photogrammetry? What are they going to do? Because I know 1 year ago, you guys had just released, ioConnect had been in the market for like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And you were kind of on the fence of like, oh, photogrammetry is the gold standard and we're offering this solution. How do you feel these days? Because how about I start with how I feel so I don't put you on the spot.
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think photogrammetry is dead. We're starting to get a lot of papers now. I personally did my own literature that I'm working on publishing. Academia takes so freaking long. It takes so much longer than me just writing a blog. But anyway, yeah, I don't use my iCam anymore, basically. I have an iMetric. I don't use it anymore. I genuinely believe, and even from my own scientific data, where we took a model and we scanned it like 600 times with various different scanners and horizontal scan bodies. I have to say, man, with modern scanners and how the stitching algorithms are and the large field of view windows, and I think it's problem solved. These horizontal scan bodies, in my opinion, is the way forward. Whichever company you go with, I mean, obviously you guys make a really slick premium solution for those who don't have an Elite, and the construction's really nice. But to me, we used to say photogrammetry is the gold standard, and I feel like that was just us because it always was. And, it felt kind of crazy to be like, oh no, that's disrupted. But I truly believe
Right.
it's disrupted. I don't think these guys are going to be around long enough unless they can pivot into something like iPhone scanning, what Pick is doing, or something of that nature.
Yeah. So I'll try to be careful with my words and take this with a grain of salt. These are just my thoughts. I think photogrammetry is fine, and the technology that utilizes photogrammetry is awesome. The only problem with photogrammetry is that it's too bulky, it's too non-user friendly, and it's too expensive. That was kind of like the roadblock.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were preaching when we released the ioConnect, which is the lateral scan bodies, was that in a few years, maybe within a year, we were saying that accuracy, what everybody is talking about, is going to be irrelevant.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said it's going to be irrelevant is because at the end of the day, all you need to know is that it works and it fits, right? So we talking about 30 microns, 20 microns, 40 microns is going to be irrelevant. And that's what we were preaching for the ioConnect, is clinical data is all that matters for that product. And I think we're at the cusp of what you're saying, just like the ioConnect product, which relies on the technology of the scanners, but just makes it a little bit better. Scanner companies will not sit there and be idle and not developed. So as the scanners become more and more accurate and the software algorithm becomes more and more accurate, then that bulkiness, expensive, non-user friendly photogrammetry is now out of the picture. Like, why would you do that? But I also think that if you take photogrammetry solutions and you make it cheap, accessible, and user friendly, then we have a whole line of different products that we could utilize using that technology.
And it won't be in its current state because there's no way you can make that big box the cost
No.
of a horizontal scan body kit. It's got to be something else. And it's fascinating watching the industry pivot and companies respond. Like we saw 3Shape make a partnership with you guys because they had to respond, and Medit released their software and their partnerships with horizontal Scanbody companies, and that's been really interesting to watch.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay, so that's photogrammetry and scanners and printers. Apart from that, any other cool stuff that you've seen? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I guess that's the whole industry as a whole, right?
Yeah, I think there wasn't too much. There were some really exciting things going on, but there wasn't too much. I think this year has been a little bit slower on certain aspects where the bigger companies at least, weren't coming out with anything very innovative. I should say they came out with something new, but nothing that was, this wasn't available in the market and we could use this. Oh, I could change my workflow utilizing this kind of solutions. And from a TruAbutment's perspective, I think ioConnect was kind of like the big introduction and game changer for full arches from our perspective. But we've been so busy R&Ding and trying to come up with products that connect to that initial capture of data that I personally didn't have too much time kind of considering what other companies were doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Like when you think about the top 5 intraoral scanner companies, I mean, the one interesting pivot that I would say on the scanning front is Medit releasing iPad scanning. And I think that's
Mm.
going to probably be a new market norm. I genuinely believe that. I think more and more scanners are going to port to iPads because it comes back to what you said. It's just accessibility, ease of use, etc. And it just looks really good. You can hand it to the
Yeah.
patient. But that's really the scanning front done and dusted. And implants are implants. I mean, it's fascinating to see how the full arch workflows have matured over the years. And you guys have been front and center watching that and how that's developed, not just on the scanning front, but also restorative and what we believe is appropriate. Even on the surgical front, what we believe is appropriate to do. You guys do obviously a lot of bars, etc., but we're seeing kind of this semi-resurgence of full contour zirconia on all our necks, and that's kind of
Yep.
fascinating to watch. But anyway, so that's the year in review, let's say. But let's jump into what you guys have been up to, because we had a chat, off the podcast briefly, and you guys are up to some really interesting things. Please run me down some of the new stuff coming. Obviously, we have the T markers, and I'm going to give you guys a bit of flack. You guys have been talking about that a long time, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of
Yeah, that's true.
prototyping. We've seen a lot of hype, but I think it's been a year. Are we getting close to those being a viable launch product?
Yes, we actually started taking pre-sale orders, I believe, starting from last month.
No way.
And
Congrats.
the first batch actually is going to be sent out, I think, on December. So,
And those who don't know what a T marker is, in case you're listening, it's basically,
yes.
go ahead. You're the best
Yeah,
person to
no.
talk about it.
I mean, you and me both, we're on the same page. But T-Markers is basically the photogrammetry solution that we developed on the iPad. So, like I said, goes back to utilizing that photogrammetry algorithm and solution software wise, but utilizing hardware that's very accessible, like the iPad, that you either already have or you could get for really, really cheap. And yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? It utilizes abutment level scan flags that you attach to the abutment, and you utilize the software that we developed that you could download from the App Store on your iPad, and you use your iPad camera to capture those data. Yeah, and it works exactly like the ioConnect, but you don't need to use the scanner to capture that data, just like you using an iCam or a micromapper or those kind of devices. But yeah, so that was the initial and the launch of that initial data set. And what we're developing on the back end that connects to that is two things. Number one is to be able to do a full scan, dentate or edentulous on the iPad that connects to that scan of the photogrammetry. And also Dentru 3.0, which is our denture design software, but upgraded so that you could actually design your provisional or temporary right on the iPad. So that whole workflow will be right on the iPad as you capture, and you'll be able to capture all the data utilizing that iPad, and then go to actually just designing your provisional, and then you'll be able to airdrop it or send it to your desktop or laptop and be able to just load it up on the cloud for print. So that's the development. There's further developments and products that goes between the ioConnect and TMarker because both products will be available. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you're able to capture the MUA locations using T markers, be able to capture the tissue with the T marker also, then how do you capture bite? Bite is still conventional methods where you have a wax rim or do whatever it is, whether it's denture. We're coming up with a product that you could actually attach to the abutment level and it expands and collapses and you could tilt an angle and you're able to use that to capture bite, video, and VDR. So you'll be able to use that product to actually maintain that workflow and be able to capture bite right at that position and that spot. We have a product out now called Dual Align Scanbodies. And this is a connection to doing your provisionals and then transitioning the provisional into a temporary or a temporary to a final. And what I mean by that is the biggest, I would say, the weakest point in transitioning from a provisional to a temporary or temporary to a final from a digital perspective is the change of byte. Mm-hmm. So whenever you adjust the byte, how do you reposition and re-enter that new byte data with the current good location MUA that I've already measured using whatever solution that you have, right? This dual align scan bodies actually is reverse scan bodies that you could attach to the provisional once you've adjusted the byte, and you could actually scan it 360, and that new byte actually is now you're able to align it with the ioConnect data because on the software, you're able to export that dual line scan body attached to the MUA, if that makes sense.
Does it?
And so now now the new byte is now easily transitioned into your temporary or final. So a lot of different products and things going on. Yeah.
It's amazing to see you guys look at every step of the workflow and try and make it better. And I want to piece by piece go through this. Okay, so let's just talk about the iPad scanning because you just gave me a ton of interesting information. Let's talk about the T markers themselves. So one thing, and I don't mean to be rude or anything, one thing I'm seeing in the industry is like photogrammetry is kind of like AI. It's like this hype word that everyone uses. For example, the elite says it's photogrammetry, IPG. I've talked to them, it's not exactly photogrammetry. It's more like a horizontal scan body workflow because you need two cameras for photogrammetry. That's kind of the basic essence of photogrammetry, triangulation. Right. So with this iPad, is it really photogrammetry or are you using two cameras or, without getting into the details of how it works, because I'm sure that's your IP, but how exactly is it working?
Sure. So the definition of photogrammetry doesn't really require you to have multiple cameras, but the way that our software utilizes that same type of algorithm and technology is by capturing on different angles using the same camera. So what it does is it captures a data set of a certain position vector. And then once you move the camera around, it doesn't reset it, but what it does is it recalculates from a different vector and then utilizes that data as you would if you had multiple cameras that's shooting from different angles. So software-wise, we were able to figure that out and be able to implement it into that software and make it faster and easier because the program is really, really light. I'm sure you'll be able to test it soon, but it's really fast and really simple. But yeah, that's like the basis of that technology of T markers.
That's incredible. And the time to get it out, was that just like refining that software and getting it to the point that you guys are confident and happy that? So I assume you've done 1 million tests. I'm sure you have before you launch. And you guys are confident that this iPad scanning works. It's accurate. It's as good as, let's say, scanning with ioConnect.
Yeah. So we actually had a working version that was either the same amount of accuracy as ioConnect or a little bit better when you take the average of the T marker. And that was a year ago. The reason for the delay was two parts, I guess. Number one was we did a shift of development because in the beginning, when we were thinking about developing T markers, we were just thinking about developing T markers and getting a product out that captures the data of the MUAs without thinking what's happening behind. We shifted because we realized that that's not going to be enough. And so, in order to integrate that software into a workflow where you're able to take a edentulous or a dentate scan with the iPad and also be able to have a design software that you could design a provisional, we couldn't use the old model because the algorithm and the UI of the old model didn't allow us for that workflow. So we had to press the reset button and just completely redevelop that whole workflow into the future developments that we were planning to do for the T marker. And the second reason why it was delayed was because we started testing on different situations, but we found that we wanted to test it a lot more rigorously in real world situations where you could have implants so close together that maybe the T marker won't fit. You could have a severe angulation where the markers will be hidden between a different marker. And so in order to come up with different kind of scenarios and different kind of, I guess, situations where it'll be hard to use a T marker, we didn't want to prohibit people being able to use T markers in certain situations and not use T markers in other situations. So when we started doing the testing, we needed to come up with a different provisional method in order to cover those kind of really severe cases and aspects. And so what we further developed into T markers was an algorithm called anchor points. And what that development did was, let's say, for example, you have a situation where the implant is so deep or implant is hidden or the angulation is severe so that you can't put all the markers in at once. What you can do is you could actually add the T markers on the units that is very visible. The software will create an anchor point on one of the markers. And then you're able to stop the scan, take off all the rest of the T markers and put in the ones that you haven't put on and restart it. And it'll identify the marker and be able to get an additive data on the markers that you've put in new on the abutment. So like those kind of workflows will allow you to be very kind of flexible and versatile in any kind of situation that you could run into. And I guess that is probably the biggest reason because it took so long to create scenarios because we can't wait for patients with those kind of scenarios to come up. So we had to come up with thousands of different scenarios that will work in severe cases for the T markers.
That's fascinating, man. And it's, you bring up some really interesting points because the whole implants that are too close together, that's actually, a lot of people don't realize that horizontal scan bodies are amazing. But oftentimes, especially some of these horizontal scan bodies, they're quite wide and you actually can't fit two right next to each other. And they don't really have a workflow like that to get around that.
Yep.
And that's actually where photogrammetry, traditional photogrammetry with the thin cylinders is actually a way to get around that. So it's fascinating you guys are thinking of that and you've found a solution. I'm curious though, I'm sitting here, if I was a customer, ioConnect horizontal scan bodies by TruAbutment, I think a kit is around 3,000 or something.
Yes.
And the T marker, how much is it going to cost?
T marker, I believe, is 3,000 also,
Amazing.
but has a subscription fee of $99 per month.
For the software.
So, yeah, for the software. Yeah.
No problem. So how are you guys pitching this as a company? Like, how do you guide a customer to which one is better for them? Like in your mind, you must have an idea. I mean, both of them work, let's say, for full arch implant scanning. How are you kind of making that customer journey of which way they should go? Should they go for the horizontal scan bodies or should they go for this iPad scanning, or what's that discussion?
We predict that there's going to be a lot of doctors that utilizes both. And the way that they'll utilize both is to use the ioConnect with their current scanner because they have done the work up to the provisional work using that scanner. So utilizing the ioConnect because it's so simple and works with their scanner to get the data for the provisional and the temporary, and then switch to the photogrammetry when they're switching to the temporary to the final. And so from our company's perspective, that would be the perfect scenario, but that won't happen for everybody. So it is a little bit of a different market where the ioConnect is going to be reliant on scanners. So for those people who utilizes their scanners or wants to maintain that workflow utilizing their scanner, they'll be more interested in utilizing the ioConnect product because it's so familiar and they like their scanner. The T marker, the projection of T marker is basically stating, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get in trouble by saying this, but we're basically stating you don't need a scanner if you go down that route of T marker because you'll be able to do everything with the T marker without the scanner that you need to do with the scanner. So it's a different kind of pathway that you could go. Of course, T marker, the way that it's priced so that if you're a doctor that does full arches maybe once every 6 months, it's not going to be worth it, right? It's better for you to get an ioConnect. You just buy it once and then you're set, and you can use it whenever you have arches. But if you're a practice that does, multiple full arches a month or 2 months or 3 months, then we're saying that T marker probably makes more sense.
And in your eyes, would you say the T marker is more accurate than the ioConnect? Because it's interesting. You said the from scan to provisional, use ioConnect, and I think with the provisional step, you can get away with a lot just because the provisional restorations, they flex and you can just put them in. But it's that from provisional to final step that you realize if your scan is actually accurate, because you can have a well-fitting provisional, use the same scan data, and then all of a sudden your zirconia doesn't fit passively. And it's interesting you say that, in your eyes, the ideal scenario is to go from ioConnect to T marker. So is it fair to say that perhaps the T marker is more accurate, or that's not kind of the thinking there?
I would say the T marker is, if you take the average, it is a little bit more accurate, but better than being accurate, it's more stable.
Sure.
The reason why I say that workflow of utilizing ioConnect for your provisional and temporary and then switching to T markers for your final is ideal is because T marker is controlled. It's in a controlled environment where we could predict the low range and the high range of the accuracy of the T marker is very predictable. And we have full control over the development of that software, so we don't have to rely on different type of scanners to give you different kind of output on that transition, right? But since ioConnect is reliant on scanners, depending on what scanner you use, you have discrepancies, right? And different kind of low ranges and high ranges. At the end of the day, they both work. So we go back to the saying, why does it even matter when both work, right? But if you are wanting to have a little bit more control over predictability, then in an ideal setting, I would say from our perspective, it would be T marker because we have, of course, full control over the accuracy or the control over the output of the T markers.
It's fascinating, man. And by the way, you're 100% correct that a lot of people don't realize, even though all scanners are fast and they're accurate, that's mainly for like crown and bridge and tooth-borne restorations. In my own testing, and I've tested like 25 different scanners on that model, there is actually quite a large difference between the top scanners and the cheapest of the cheap scanners for full arch implant scanning. And I'm not talking about direct to MUA scanning because none of those work, but I'm talking about on horizontal Scanbodies. Some scanners, even with a horizontal Scanbody, it's like 200 micron discrepancy. So you're totally correct.
I saw that.
And I think people need to realize that, especially if you're doing full arch work, go buy a reputable scanner. That's what
a decent scanner, yeah. Go buy a decent scanner. The problem with ioConnect is we don't have control over that. So you have every witch doctor and GPs and specialists wanting to do this kind of workflow for whatever hardware that they have, right? And since we don't have control over that, it's very hard to kind of put a period on it and say, hey, this is the predictable outcome and this is what you're going to get. But like you said, we've tested all the major brands and they work completely fine and you'll have great results. The problem is some of the other scanners.
Really cheap. I'll say it because you can't. The cheapest of the cheap on the market are not suitable for full arch implants.
Okay, thank you. You kind of scratched the itch right there.
You're welcome. But like I would say the top 5, 6, 7, 8 brands, all the main guys that are, you can't buy their scanner off eBay is probably a good idea.
Right.
Anyway, another thing that you've been talking about is scanning on the iPad. What? So you're saying you guys are developing, like, I can't understand that, because how are you scanning the distal corners of the mouth on an iPad? Or is that not the concept here?
So yeah, there's I can't say much right now because of the NDA probably that I signed. But from the testing that I've seen with the type of tools that we use, and I'll be able to. I think we signed an NDA too. I think I'll be able to. I think I'll be able to send it to you. It's mind blowing how accurate this iPad is converting that STL file version of what it's seeing. Um, and in the beginning, when I had my doubts, also I was thinking, okay, edentulous, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, of course.
Um, right. I could see engineering wise why edentulous wouldn't be too much of an issue,
Maybe some people are
as long as
imagining
it.
you're putting the iPad in the mouth, though. Like, how does the camera see
No,
that far? That's incredible, man.
no.
If you guys, I
Yeah,
mean, I know you can't say too much, but if you pulled this off, this is kind of crazy.
it is. It is. It's so that's why I'm very careful about what I say. Is because if something like this works, then it has very big impacts on how the industry shifts and possibly and how people look at different kind of hardware. But yeah, it's amazing. I'll show you the STL file. It's just mind blowing what we could do with the type of hardware that we already have, just by solving it with software and algorithm.
It's
So
crazy. And it's funny, right at the start, I was mentioning that scanners are going to go on iPads. I don't know, maybe I jinxed this whole podcast because it sounds like more scanners are going to go on iPads in some way or form if you guys pulled this off.
yeah, not even iPads. It's whatever hardware that other companies either utilize that's out there in the market or rebrand it, white label it, or develop their own hardware. I feel like it's going to change a lot from our current state of one type, you know, big kind of hardware scanner situations. And you see little hints of companies moving towards that direction, whether they make it mobile, they make it smaller, they do little things that shows you that it's going towards that direction. But I personally feel that it's going to be a lot more drastic coming maybe next year.
Exciting,
So
man. That's exciting. Oh, well, I'll leave that to that. You'll have to show me the STLs later. I'm curious.
yeah,
The last thing you mentioned is the kind of the reverse scan body. I know that's not the right name because reverse scan body was like a real popular thing to get around full arch implant scanning, and then that kind of died away. But so you guys are saying when you want to convert, basically, if you adjust the provisional bite and you want to convert that, you take off the temporary, you put these scan bodies on, you can scan it. Don't you feel like that's a little annoying? Like when the provisional's there and I've drilled it down, I don't really want to take it off, or it's just a workflow option. You know what I mean?
sure, I guess.
But you are totally correct because I've had this myself. Like how I'm doing it currently, if I adjust the provisional, I rescan it and I rescan the lower or the opposing arch and then the bite, and then I give that to my lab, and then they have to try align it. But yeah, the bite is not always perfect, and that does bug me.
It's not. So we go back to the scenario of when you do, let's say, for example, 10 cases, and you have two cases or three cases that the bite is off from the amount that you originally adjusted. And so you have to readjust
It's
and spend
annoying.
an extra time. What is it worth to a doctor when you could reduce that down to almost zero or one out of maybe 50 cases, right?
Hugely, hugely.
Then if you look at it from that perspective, then it's really huge, right? So the idea is, yes, the current method works, but if you understand how labs or doctors utilize a new bite digitally, then question marks start to arrive. Is this safe to do? Is this really accurate? Because basically we're using tissue and gingiva to superimpose that new bite data.
Yeah.
And you don't need me to say that tissue is the worst enemy of you know
Alignment.
capturing accurate data and alignment. So just by utilizing these dual we call it dual align Scanbodies, you're going to adjust the bite anyway, and you're going to scan anyway. But all you're doing is not scanning in the mouth, but just taking it out and scanning it outside the mouth.
I will
Right?
say though that taking it out and scanning it outside the mouth, I'll be honest, a lot of people struggle with extraoral scanning. Like scanning a denture outside the mouth, a lot of people struggle with that. I guess with the arch, it's much easier because you don't have like all the flanges and all of that. So that's probably
Yeah.
a bunch easier. But I mean, perhaps with this iPad scanning, it's even easier. But anyway.
Maybe.
Okay, so man, you guys are doing a lot. It's really exciting. You guys are punching.
We've been busy.
No
Yeah.
wonder you said I've been busy. I was wondering. I thought you were just gassing me up, but no, you've been really busy.
Yeah. No, we've been super busy. We fortunately are one of the companies that are can't get enough people in hiring just because of the amount of things that we are doing, event wise, product wise, R&D wise, and everything connected to that. Um, but yeah, every single one of our staff, our sales team, our CS team, our R&D team, marketing team, we've been so busy. It's just in part it's a blessing because we have things stacked up to do, until the end of next year. But it's overwhelming. But I feel like it's always better to be on that side compared to not having anything to innovate or bring out, I guess, from a company's perspective, right?
Yeah, 100%. You did touch on something interesting. It has been a tough year for some companies, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. Because I think there might be more consolidation, or just some people exit and decide this is not for them. This digital thing is too difficult.
Yep, there's going to be more consolidation. I think I don't like to call it AI because the companies that are doing the right thing and utilizing that kind of technology is thinking more in terms of kind of deep thinking algorithm. So you will see a lot more integration of that deep thinking into different kind of products and services starting next year. Because I know just on the top of my head, there's a lot of companies that are investing into that technology. So
And I guess the last thing before we wrap up, my friend, and I really do appreciate your time. You're an extremely busy guy, and to give me an hour of your time is I really appreciate it. But you talked about a printer. Can we talk more about the printer, or is that a hush hush?
um, can I? I don't know. The the first set of materials that we're going to come out with is going to be flexibles.
All right.
So it's going to be for dentures and partials. It's going to be material that has quite a bit of flex in it, very easy to work with. The development that we were doing was on the Asiga printer, but there's other printers that we have in mind in the market that we want to develop and partner up with. So
This is your
we'll
own
see how
development.
that
It's not
goes.
an OEM. It's your own development.
No, these are our own developments.
That's crazy, man.
We actually acquisitioned a company called Denka a few years back, and that company was a CAD/CAM denture company that developed their own materials, and they were white labeling it to other companies, other big companies that I can't name right now. But yeah, that company was actually bought up by Mitsui Chemicals, and we ended up buying it out
No
off of
way.
them. And so, and the main reason why we bought out the company was for development of printable materials, because that's where we wanted to have a portfolio also, because we had ideas. Now we have products, restorative solutions, data capture, design softwares, and then the end result, right? The end result where you use a printer or whatnot was the section that we didn't really have a solutions for, but we wanted to come up with our own materials that you could use for denture bases, partials, all on X materials, composite materials, teeth, those kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the, I guess, the last iteration of what we're developing. That's going to start coming out next year.
So all these products that we talked about is next year. People can expect them sometime next year.
Yes, yes. The Dual Align Scanbodies is actually available already. We've actually made them available like a month back or 2 months back. So anybody that utilizes the ioConnect will be able to purchase the Dual Align Scanbodies if that's the workflow that they want to utilize in their offices. And we just have so many products. It's very hard to if you understand full arch and if you understand digital, it's very easy to, like yourself, just me explaining to you kind of makes sense in your head, and you kind of understand how the workflow goes. But that's not the case for a lot of the doctors that are wanting to get into this field. And so it requires some time to educate and whatnot. For example, we have another product which is called a Reamer kit. Basically is to use for printing out your provisionals and temporaries, and you're able to ream the direct screw portion or the tie-based portion, so that you get rid of any kind of anomalies and misprints on the provisionals and temporaries, like those kind of products. So it's not for everybody, but we have it if you need it.
That's
right?
fascinating, man, because you guys really just look at the workflow and look at where are the pain points and what can we do, because that's also a pain point. I mean, a Sieg is a killer printer that it seems to always print the screw channels basically perfectly. But a lot of other printers, sometimes, depending on how you angle the print on the build plate, etc., you can get that little constriction and the screws don't go in. It's freaking frustrating.
But now you have the Reamer kit, so you could just perfect that print on that direct screw or that tie-based portion. So
that's incredible, man. You guys are doing a lot. You guys are like
thank you.
a train with no brakes.
Yeah, well, yeah. So we got our work cut out for next year. Just from a marketing perspective or product perspective, we're actually ahead in R&D than the marketing. The marketing is trailing behind right now because we're putting out so many products. So,
well, congratulations, man. Congratulations to the entire team. Genuinely looking forward to it. Some of the things you're saying are kind of crazy and could be totally disruptive, and others are just going to hopefully make the workflow better. But I really appreciate your time, Jay.
Thank you very much.
That's been another episode, guys, of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Today we've been lucky. You saw Jay Kim and you listened to Jay Kim, should I say. And he's just basically told us everything we can come to expect for 2026. And it sounds like a lot. So Jay's the VP of Business Development and Education at TruAbutment. Super fortunate to have him here for an hour speaking to us. And of course, please share this with your friends, your colleagues. It does help us out a lot. Subscribe to our podcast. And for all things digital dentistry, go to instituteofdigitaldentistry.com. Thanks for listening.